I don't care, I'm still free. You can't take the sky from me.
Hello again. Well, I hope you're excited and having as much fun on your Lamyak build as I am. Now let's take a look at the graphic above. Now notice everything highlighted in yellow. Now these are the CNC fuselage parts. Now if you haven't done so, go ahead and laminate them at this time because well, we'll need them for the rest of the build. So let's go ahead and do that now and have fun building the rest of the fuselage. Now with the parts all laminated and ready to go, first thing you need to do is take the motor mount that you chose, the one that you built, and pin it down over the plans where it goes. And besides sticking pins on the front, I also stuck a couple towards the tail there, keep everything straight. Now the first thing I'm doing is taking the CNC parts that I just laminated, and I'm fitting them, just loosely fitting them, no glue at this time. Now balsa can be kind of a temperamental wood. With humidity and temperature changes, well, it expands and contracts. That's why I like to go through and pre-fit everything now. That way if any sanding needs to be done, I can do it now instead of getting caught with a bottle of glue in my hand and two parts that don't fit quite right. Now here I just want to go through and show you an easy method I found for marking wood to be cut. Simply take my X-Acto knife and line it up with the lines right over the plans. Kind of rock it back and forth a little bit. Now I'm just looking to mark the wood here, not to slice through it. I did, however, exaggerate my mark a little bit, so you'd be able to see it a little bit better on the video. Now what I like to use to cut my parts is my aluminum miter box. I think it's made by Dubro. Had it too many years, I can't remember. About 15 or 16. Cuts nice square ends. Now when cutting, I always make sure and cut about a 1/16 of an inch or more to the outside of the line, and then I sand it down. That way I get a true fit. Now the square edge sander you see me using here is just something I made myself. I took a piece of aircraft plywood, made sure it was perfectly square, took a scrap piece of maple rail that I had and glued it along one edge, and it works great, worth its weight in gold. If you don't have one, I would suggest you build one. It only costs a few dollars. Now with the motor mount and the fiberglass tube laid out over the plans, I went ahead and marked the tube here, and as you can see I'm just cutting it with my razor saw. Decided to go ahead and leave the extra length on. This of course will give you the option to build an extended length fuselage if you wish. Some builders like to do that, so I thought I'd leave that option in. On mine you can see I cut it to the plans. Here I'm just showing how I have the major outline of the fuselage done. Now nothing's glued yet, everything's just pinned down. So let's go ahead and cut and fit all the fuselage parts out. Now for angled pieces like this, obviously I can't cut them on my aluminum miter box there. So as you can see, I'm just doing a quick freehand cutting. Then I'll take the straight edge sander that I made earlier and I'll just hold the stick at the proper angle and true it up. Now while going through and framing up the fuselage, I thought I'd show you one of my favorite little tools here. You can mark things with an X-Acto knife, but I also like to use my caliper. I find it a highly accurate measuring tool that you don't actually have to measure with. Now you see me use it directly on the plans, but where it really comes in handy is when you're measuring between two pieces where you need to cut out a balsa stick to fit a part. Now this graphic shows the main outline of the fuselage. Now the parts highlighted in yellow are the CNC cut parts, and the parts in red, well, those you have to cut out with the sticks that are provided for you in your kit. Now in this close-up of the tail section, I want to go ahead and point out the pieces highlighted in red. Now these are made out of 1/4 inch square balsa and basswood sticks, one glued on top of the other. Now here's a graphic showing the side view of the servo rails. The part highlighted in red is basswood, and the part highlighted in yellow is balsa. Now the basswood will have plenty of strength to hold the servo screw, but I would suggest that you pre-drill before screwing the servo screw in so that you do not split the basswood servo rail. So here I'll go ahead and start framing up the servo rails, and again you can mark the stick using an X-Acto knife, which is something I do all the time. Then you can use your trusty miter box to make the cut square. Or here's a spot where I can pull out the caliper. I just open it up using the inner diameter tangs, lay that on the stick, mark it, then pull out my miter box, go ahead and cut the stick square, use the little sanding jig that I made earlier, go ahead and get the part fit. As I mentioned once before, I like to cut it about a 1/16 of an inch, at least a 32nd of an inch longer, and then sand it down to the proper fit. I'll go ahead and speed things up again. You know, that's one of the beauties of doing video. Instead of making you sit through 12 minutes worth of building, we can sit there and sum it all up in about 20-30 seconds. So here we have the completed servo rails. Next I'll cut and fit the cross members. Those are the pieces that are right next to the servos that go between the servo rails. Now besides the strength it adds, it gives something for your iron-on covering to bond to. Actually, I almost forgot. I want to start from the front of the plane and work my way back and glue everything together before I do the lattice work and before I glue in the servo rails. Now I went ahead and slowed the video down here so I could point out a couple important parts. When gluing the balsa pieces that go underneath and above the motor mount, I was careful to add just a few drops of thick CA, which I'm squeezing together now. And I'm going to go ahead and unpin it and pull it away slightly because you do not want to glue the motor mount in at this time. Now that's paramount. If you have to, slip a small piece of wax paper between the motor mount and the wing saddle pieces, and this will help keep the motor mount protected from glue seepage. And by the way, that goes for the fiberglass tube. You do not want to glue it into the tube huggers by accident at this time. If you have to, protect it with wax paper also. Now I'll go ahead and speed things back up here again. So again, I'm going to start gluing everything together and working my way from the front to the back so I hit every piece. I'm going to use thick CA for this. It's a good choice for this project. Now one reason I like using thick CA compared to thin CA is it takes longer to dry. So it soaks into the wood, gives it a lot more strength, a lot more leverage, and just an overall stronger bond. Now here you can see I'm starting the lattice work, and I'm going to start from the front and move towards the back. Now if you're new to building, don't worry. There's nothing hard about this part. It doesn't even take that much time. And everything that you've learned so far about marking, cutting, and fitting parts should get you through this with no problem. Now I'm going to go ahead and speed this back up again, and while we watch it, I'll cover a few other areas. Now one thing to keep in mind is that this lattice work does not have to be perfect. It does not have to match every millimeter of every line on the plans. Kind of like in horseshoes and hand grenades, close is good enough. So if you find yourself slightly to the left or slightly to the right of the line, believe me, it's no problem. Nothing to worry about. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but this is one of the areas on the fuselage that I do use thin CA. The bond's good enough for the lattice work, and it does speed the building process up. Now you can use kicker, but in certain areas I don't like to use it. I think you get a stronger bond if you just let the glue dry on its own. And there she is, a finished fuselage ready for sanding. Well, again, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. On to the next part.
I don't care, I'm still free. You can't take the sky from